there's been always this barometer that every director would try to attempt to do a Napoleon movie. Orson Welles was in a Napoleon movie. I thought he directed one. He actually was in a Napoleon movie that was in 1955. We talked about Napoleon as a figure in movies as kind of adjacent. Kind of like, I wasn't Bill and Ted, was he? Bill and Ted?
I think there must have been some mention.
Bill and Ted. But also, a lot of other movies have him as a side character. Stanley Kubrick was entertaining the idea to get started on a Napoleon movie.
Yeah.
What I'm saying is establishing, it's a bold, established attempt as a director saying, I'm going to take on this subject because there's a lot of ways you can fail with it.
Yeah, and the interesting thing about Ridley Scott having this is that because of Kubrick's death, Spielberg has been trying to get a miniseries based on Napoleon put together for years, kind of in his honor. So this would actually be the second time a Ridley Scott movie beat a miniseries adaptation of a story to the punch. He did it with All the Money in the World.
Oh, right,
and he did it again here with today's film.
Yeah.
So
today we're going to talk about Ridley Scott doing Napoleon.
welcome back to the show, everyone. I'm one of your hosts, Kyle Goethe from GoatFilmReviews.com.
I am Nick from the St. Paul Filmcast. Thanks for finding us. Thanks for watching. And for our loyal fans, thank you for continuing to support the show. Hey, you can follow the show on X and on Instagram. Heck yeah, we have a Patreon. Check that out for some great deals and some great content and an opportunity to tell us what movies we can review here on the show with a shout out to you in the future episodes. Both Kyle and I are members of the Minnesota Film Critics Alliance. Check out that webpage for critics' reviews as well as ours. And today we just came off the press screening up a couple days ago of Napoleon.
Yeah, so let's talk about the film, which will be available in theaters in just a couple of days.
Yeah.
And then there is no current date for the Apple Plus adaptation, but it is on the way. So definitely look for that soon there. Napoleon follows the rise and fall of the French emperor who sought to conquer and rule, Napoleon Bonaparte, alongside his wife Josephine, as they push and pull away from each other throughout their lives. As Napoleon vies for more power, Josephine finds the loneliness too much to handle, and the famed conqueror finds his enemies rising up from all sides.
This is Ridley Scott doing another sword and kind of a sandal kind of a movie. He just came off doing Last Duel last year.
Yeah, well, he announced this film on the last day of shooting The Last Duel. So he definitely was in a mood for it.
And he's already doing Napoleon. It's already been confirmed they are in production of doing Gladiator Part 2. Pretty much the same, I think the same screenplay writer, same cinematographer, same editor are in Gladiator 2.
Oh, from this film to that one?
Yeah.
Okay.
Also, this is another film of kind of the same kind of genre, like Kingdom of Heaven. He did Legend. He's on
Robin Hood.
Robin Hood. So very much this is kind of his forte. He is entertaining a lot of ideas of doing these kind of genre films with kind of swords and all that stuff. But a different take. Challenge enough to do the Napoleon. It's very bold strokes. Background wise, I don't know much about why he took on this selection, other than just thumb your nose at everybody else that wants to take on, other directors want to take on the role.
Yeah, it's a curious choice because, again, he's done kind of these films before in much the same way that we would kind of associate Martin Scorsese with mobster films, where they do a lot of other movies, but they always seem to kind of come back to this specific genre, and that seems like what Ridley Scott, he's done Alien and Blade Runner, all these things, but he always finds himself back in these kinds of historical epics of some form. But I don't really know exactly what sprang out to him. Of course, there's been a number of books about Napoleon, a few that recently have come out in the past decade that have kind of, recontextualized the figure or tried to do so. And so that may have been what finally got him over. Maybe just had a hell of a time making The Last Duel.
Cinematographer is one of my favorites. It's Dariusz Wolski. He's done Dark City. He's done Last Duel. Also, The Counselor. Check that out. That's a Cormac McCarthy screenplay. Arthur Cormac McCarthy, his one and only screenplay, and that was The Counselor. Also, he's done with Ridley Scott All the Money in the World, Prometheus. He's also gone to, of course, my favorite. One of my favorites, Romeo's Bleeding. I don't think anybody else loves it much as I do. But also The Crow, too. And Dariusz Wolski, I think he's assigned to do Gladiator 2 as well. So Ridley Scott's kind of a favorite of a cinematographer with it.
Yeah, because I think they also did The Martian together. And and one of the other recent films that Wolski did where I didn't love the film, But I will never not say that it's not a gorgeous movie, and that's News of the World, the film that Tom Hanks starred in just a couple of years ago, where he was protecting a girl on the frontier. That movie looks gorgeous. Every frame is a painting, and I think that's kind of what he presents. Is that I don't know that he always picks the best movies, but he always makes them look the best that he can.
Darius, yes, for cinematography.
Yeah.
This is written by David Scarpa. He's written screenplays for Last Castle, All the Money in the World, Man in the High Castle, which is one of my Philip K. Dick's story, is one of his very long novellas. And then he did the screenplay for this one. He also did the screenplay for coming up next year, Gladiator 2.
Fair enough.
So not very much a lot of credit for him, but obviously it seems that Ridley Scott likes what he writes.
Yeah, I mean, of course, then Scarpa has taken on some projects that I think are kind of like not good idea projects in such a way where like he took on the project like The Day the Earth Stood Still, the 2008 adaptation with Keanu Reeves, a movie that I thought actually was kind of a good idea at the first time I saw it, and then I rewatched the original film and I just said, how does the original film scare me more than the current one? And it's kind of like he's taken on some pretty hefty projects that have mixed results. So it's kind of a wonder that he kind of keeps this relationship. They must have a good working relationship, him and Ridley Scott.
Yeah.
And it does seem like there was some rewrites done to the script after Joaquin Phoenix was hired because of the gravitas that he was bringing to the performance. Scott wanted more of those kinds of scenes to get him time. So Scarpa maybe is good at a quick rewrite as well.
Yeah. Really occasionally likes to do big scope, sometimes intimate films, big scope. And when you want to do big scope kind of films, you want a writer that's going to use a big bat.
Yeah.
Swing for the fences, right? Strike out or swing for the fences. Okay, this is edited by Claire Simpson. She's one of the most accomplished editors you can find. A lot of credentials on her name. I haven't cited them in my notes.
When I realized all the way back in Platoon,
yeah,
I was
Claire,
like, okay, because I think she's one of those unsung heroes really of the time, because I've heard her name, but I've never really associated it on the level until I had looked up her filmography and kind of was taken aback.
She's probably the one that would kind of, if Ridley wants something, she'll say no, and they're like, yes, I understand.
No one ever tells Ridley that.
Right. She's probably one of those editors that film directors like, I appreciate your opinion and I honor it, and yes, you will do it that way. Okay, so yeah, let's get into the cast. It's Joaquin Phoenix. This is Vanessa Kirby. When I went to see it, I wasn't familiar with her because she's done movies that I have never seen before. So like Fast and Furious.
She did Hobbs and Shaw, which was the spin-off to Fast and Furious, and I believe she was in the last 2 or 3 Mission Impossible films. It's tough because I watched a lot of those in kind of pretty quick succession. Yeah. And of course, Pieces of a Woman, where she was nominated for an Oscar. She actually wasn't the original Josephine, though. Originally, Jodie Comer, who had worked on The Last Duel, was signed on. But one of the many problems that happens when you have a COVID-19 pandemic is that things get jumbled around, and she had to unfortunately step away. She signed on. She said, almost in an instant after hearing that Ridley was working on this film, because I would work with him again. And considering the difficult material they had to do for The Last Duel, that's a sign for him as director.
Yeah. Okay, just running out a few of my cast because it is a great ensemble. But you have Rupert Everett playing Duke of Duke of Wellington. And then you have Paul Reese, and I'm citing Paul Reese because he's prominent in the movie, but he doesn't have a lot of speaking lines. But he's very powerful. He very prominent in the scene, and I think if you Google his name, Paul Reese, you understand, oh yeah, I recognize that guy.
Yeah, there's a lot of people you recognize in the background of this film as well. The one that surprised me was actually Ian McNeice, who was the kind of the supporting character in Ace Ventura: When Nature Calls, and a bunch of those kinds of, he played like usually the British expedition character in a lot of films, and he appears in this film as King Louis the 18th? King Louis the 18th in the film. And he just appears, I don't think he has a line in the film.
But there he is. So, running out the cast, and we got the kind of little the crew and everything. I made a great opportunity to tell us our review of Napoleon. Probably one of the best films of the year. You continue.
I think it was good.
Yeah.
That's my feeling about it. It's good. I'm going to start with the thing I really love the most, and that is, you can't underestimate Ridley Scott when it comes to making great battle sequences. I believe there are 6 in the film.
They're hard to, if you don't like animals being mauled.
Yeah, there's a specific scene early on in the film, and Nick, you'll know which one I'm talking about, where there's a damage done to a horse that literally made me push the chair back off the hinges almost. I was so taken aback by it. Yeah, the scenes are quite graphic. There's beheadings and cannoneer shots. I was told before seeing the film that some of the footage was really, really intense, particularly the sequence on the ice lake that had been mentioned multiple times, shown at CinemaCon and a number of things. That was
it's on the trailer.
Point for that.
Yeah.
The battle scenes are chef's kiss exquisite across the board.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Obviously, look out for, I think there's probably Oscar nominations for set direction. I think Darius is going to get an Oscar nomination for cinematography. Costuming is definitely going to be one of those things.
Production design.
And I really look out for Vanessa Kirby to get probably an Oscar nomination for acting.
Yeah, I wouldn't be shocked about that. And again, she's the caliber. She's already had one before, and that when you tend to have one in a quick succession, you get thought about more frequently. I wonder about things like best makeup, perhaps, because there's a French time period.
Right, that time piece,
everyone had a specific style of makeup for the time. Yeah. I really liked what Joaquin Phoenix was bringing to the character because there was a lot of not talking from him.
I think because we've only seen Napoleon in paintings, we've never seen actual film footage of him, but I think he get his mannerism perfect.
Yeah.
I think you actually see three-dimensionally what Napoleon, probably his mannerisms, his acting, his tyrants, his temper tantrums.
Yep.
I think you get exactly what you see.
Yep. But I will say this about it: my big takeaway of the film actually does come from David Scarpa's screenplay, because I do think the film flows wonderfully. I did not feel the 3 hours of the film.
Yeah.
And considering that there is a 4.5-hour cut coming to Apple TV Plus, I'm wondering how that will flow as well. But it's David Scarpa's screenplay, and perhaps it's the things that are cut out of the finished film, but I feel like I did not understand Napoleon as a character through the scenes that were written for him.
Motivation,
I think
right.
Phoenix is doing as much as he possibly can to elevate that character, but I feel like I didn't understand Napoleon at all through any of the scenes that were going on. It kind of felt to me more like if Ken Burns was narrating a documentary about Napoleon's life, and we'd see these sequences, but we didn't get to really dive into his mind and what's going through his machinations. At times, I liked that we kind of had the flip of kind of the sillier side of things, that he was so bent up with ruling and so bent up with conquering and taking over.
I do like that.
Kind of
I agree.
A fool.
Yeah.
But a lot of that was done, I think, through Phoenix's work and less through the writing.
I agree with you 100%. Writing, there's a lot of empty spaces that need to be filled in.
Yep. And this was a problem I had with Scarpa's screenplay for All the Money in the World as well. I thought that his film meandered in choosing specific smaller plot lines to tackle when more major, interesting plot lines were available. Now, I didn't really begrudge him for that too much because there was the scandal with Kevin Spacey being replaced on that film. So I don't know what they had to reshoot and how they had to kind of reform the film.
Yeah, that leaves a lot of empty.
Yeah.
If I have to take away, I really was impressed with just the magnetic scope. But understand, Ridley Scott has a lot of intimate, small vignette scenes into it. You think big scope, you're just going to get wide lenses. But there's a lot of there's a certain scene of just loading up the cannon.
Yep.
There's certain scenes of just looking at the dinnerware, and that's really, really interesting. I do like, if you haven't seen the movie yet, I'll comment on this. There's great times where it's supposed to be Napoleon's proudest moments. It's time to be a king, and there's something that just embellishes it. He sees the mummy, and it's almost like a king, and he wants to give a gesture, and it just kind of fumbles at that scene. He does something that just doesn't, it kind of deflates it.
Yeah, I particularly like when he grabbed the little stool. So and I know that the joke has always been his height, but that does kind of take away from his prowess, is that he needs to force himself to get up to a certain height, as if that speaks to his abilities as a leader.
Yeah, even he's sitting on the Russian throne, and he's sitting there being proud of himself, and then all of a sudden a bird just poops down.
Yeah.
It's every little trinkets of that, all of a sudden it tarnishes his idea that how grand I am. The coronation is wonderful.
Oh, yeah. And I particularly like that they actually have the artist that's painting the coronation of Napoleon, the actual painting that is real, in the film as well. So it's kind of like he's almost prepped for this idea of I need to make sure I have someone here. The focus is on the memory, my kingdom, in a lot of ways.
Right. I say that I love the scope. I love the editing of it. I think it flows very well. A little too long, hanging on people drowning, but that's the part of it. That's battle. That's war. You have to understand the point of it. Right when we get to the third act, we know what's going to happen. It kind of prolongs a little bit, but I understand you have to gesture the scene.
And in the third act, there is a character death that happens off screen. and the characters just learn about this person who has died off screen in the film. And I feel like, again, that either may be the editing choice of removing the scene where that character dies, or the writing of not including it. Maybe it's in the 4.5 hour cut.
Yeah.
I felt that scene, we needed to see the death, because I was almost taken aback that, like, in my mind I was starting to rewrite history, going, wait, did that person just fake a death because we didn't see them die, so they didn't die? Like, I think that kind of thing was missing. But outside of that one piece, that again might be the writing or the editing, I thought the flow of this movie was amazing. I think you and I both looked at each other near the end of the screen and we're like, it's already done? Like,
it's 3 hours.
Which is not something I can say about like some of the other lengthy films that came out this year. I liked Killers of the Flower Moon quite a bit, but I felt that it was a 3.5 hour good movie that could have been a 3 hour great movie. And I constantly criticize movies that are way too long nowadays. I didn't feel the length of Napoleon at all.
No. And I'll say right now, one of the best films of the year, and look for a Best Picture nomination for the movie. Understand that it's a wide scope, and I try to emphasize that it is best when it does the small details and you folk around. The focus is on the small, intricately set design of everything. Even Robespierre thing is wonderful. Usually you get the play on Napoleon in the background, and we talk about Robespierre, and it kind of flips it. You know, we talked about Napoleon's only adjacent, but this is, I like that we are adjacent, but now we're going to put him in front center. Joaquin Phoenix doesn't blend into the environment. He's out, but also kind of at the same time blends into the environment. It is wonderful filmmaking.
It's nice to see him as a character who is constantly kind of, he's always like seen as kind of the loser. Yeah. Even when he's always winning. And again, that's where I would love to have gotten into his headspace a little bit more, some of those personal moments. Because I am going to give the film a modest recommendation, because I do think, man, those epic battle scenes, and there are so many of them, and I think each one has its own distinct language that it's speaking. That, because honestly, if you just have battles after battles after battles, we've seen movies where there's all the action and it's done too much and it becomes overwhelming and not interesting. Yeah. This film never once loses that. So I think if every scene, if the character moments of the scene were more frequent and more inside, to the point like they were on the level of those battles, I would give this film a perfect score, because I think the battle scenes are that good. I just wish there was a little bit more with Napoleon as a character, because I feel like I didn't get him. And the problem is, again, Phoenix has had a great year. I absolutely loved his take in Beau is Afraid. It's one of my favorite movies of the year. Yeah. He was actually picked out by Scott after Scott saw him in Joker, which I think is funny because it's a drastically different character. And Scott is just this smart guy who knows, hey, I worked with him on Gladiator, and he's doing all these different things. I'm going to get him in.
It's almost like he's taking Joaquin Phoenix, almost a little bit like Joker, into Napoleon. This guy is kind of fumbling upwards.
Yeah.
And almost, in his core, a loser. A pathetic loser. But inside, he wins some things and accolades, and people support him and all that stuff. But then his brother and everything. But yeah, almost deep inside is pathetic.
Yeah. And that's why I'm excited to see the film again when it hits Apple Plus. I'm going to definitely be watching it in my home a couple of times. Yeah. I'm really excited to see the 4.5 hour director's cut, because the funny thing about Ridley Scott is, if I absolutely hate his theatrical cut, I absolutely love his director's cut. And if I love his director's cut, I hate his director's cut. And this is a movie that I liked. Yeah. So I'm just curious.
It's going to be the first time you like the theater and the director's cut.
Like, I'm just curious where that one's going to sit in the grand scheme, because it's usually one or the other.
I know.
Or in the case of Blade Runner, one and the other and the other and the other.
Probably would love to make an 8 hour Prometheus movie. You would probably want him to do it an 8 hour. Yeah.
I mean, I still want him to get his third Alien movie. It's not happening, but I still want to see how it ends.
All right. All right. If you have seen Napoleon, let us know what you think of it. Keep the conversation going. Put down a comment. Hey, tell your friends about it. Like and subscribe, of course, to the show.
Yeah. Thank you guys for joining us so very much. If you're complaining about historical inaccuracies in the film,
that's not it. Right.
To quote Ridley Scott, get a life. No, I'm joking. Thanks for watching. Thanks for enjoying us. Yeah. I've got a review over on goatfilmreviews.com coming out in the next week, just with some more thoughts about the film. You can check that out over there, and you can find over 1,000 other reviews that are probably just as much fun.
And for our new subscribers, we noticed. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you can find his webpage.
Yep.
Go Film Reviews anywhere. And you can find my show, the St. Paul Filmcast, anywhere you find podcasts. And Waterloo, couldn't help it if you want.